People often say, humans are emotional creatures. And this rings true when we think about how greed, anger, and delusion influence us. Greed leads us to obsession, anger clouds our judgment, and delusion traps us in illusions of our own making. What's striking is that most of us remain unaware of their presence. They flow like an underground current, rushing beneath even the purest of our actions. I remember meeting an old friend once. He had been very successful in his career, but was often quick to anger with colleagues and family. He shared a story about a time during a meeting when he harshly criticized an employee for not meeting his expectations. Later that day, still consumed by anger, he snapped at his wife over something trivial. These incidents became frequent, causing fractures in his family relationships. But it wasn't until he was diagnosed with a serious illness, forcing him to stop working, that he realized the things he had chased and the anger he had justified were merely the ego's response to unmet desires. He recalled lying on his sickbed, no longer able to control or impose his will on anything, feeling a sense of surrender. No more anger, no more judgment. It wasn't a conscious decision, but a deep understanding that everything is impermanent and nothing truly belongs to us forever. That was when he began practicing mindfulness. Simply breathing and observing, without judgment, without trying to change anything. At first, it was uncomfortable, but gradually he realized that anger, fear, or greed could not harm him unless he gave them power. He called it a transformation of the soul, not born from grand teachings, but from looking deeply into himself each day. When we face difficulties, we often think of them as injustices, as things to eliminate immediately. But in truth, adversity is the clearest mirror reflecting our shortcomings. Like polishing a rough stone, it is only through enough friction that it becomes a shining gem. Similarly, challenges are opportunities for the soul to be refined, transforming greed, anger, and delusion into wisdom and compassion. Life doesn't wait for us to be perfect. Every day brings lessons for growth. What matters is whether we dare to face them and learn. When facing pressure, we often discover something we rarely notice in daily life, the hidden strength and depth within our souls. Challenges are like storms. They may knock us down, but also cleanse and wash away the layers of dust that everyday life tends to obscure. It's only when chaos surrounds us that we truly start to hear our inner voice. I once met a woman who owned a small business. For years, she was consumed with building her career, setting high goals, and working tirelessly. But one day a crisis struck, and her business faced financial collapse. She lost so much, not only in terms of assets, but also her confidence in herself. She told me that during sleepless nights filled with anxiety, she kept asking herself, "Who am I without this success? Do I still have any value?" It was during those dark nights that she began journaling, an activity she had long forgotten. Through each page, she realized that for so many years, she had been living to meet the expectations of others while neglecting to love herself. She said the pain of failure forced her to reflect, not just to find a way out, but to understand herself on a deeper level. From there, she began to change, moving at a slower pace, carefully listening to her body and emotions, and focusing on simpler, more enduring values. Modern psychology supports this idea. Challenges, if embraced correctly, not only make us stronger, but also deepen our understanding of life. When people experience depression or stress, they often turn inward, reevaluating their lives through a different lens. It's a painful but necessary journey, as it teaches us how to live in harmony with ourselves. However, facing such challenges requires preparation, both physically and mentally. I'm reminded of a story from the countryside, where people live simply and stay close to nature. They tend to suffer fewer illnesses, not only because of their healthy diet, but also because their souls are nurtured by the peace of their surroundings. An elderly man once told me, "When the heart is free of greed and anger, even a bowl of plain rice feels abundant." He emphasized that the way we eat, think, and approach life are deeply interconnected. It's not just food. What we take in from the world around us greatly affects our emotions as well. Once, a student shared with me how he felt drained from constantly consuming negative news. I advised him to make a change. Instead of reading the news in the morning, take a moment to write down 3 things he was grateful for. After a month, he noticed that he felt much lighter and more positive. Life is never without challenges. But instead of running away from them, see them as teachers. Listen to them, because the messages hidden within the pain are always opportunities for growth. Most importantly, take care of your soul with mindfulness and awareness of what you consume, from food, sounds, and images to thoughts. This is what nurtures a strong heart, one that is calm enough to face any storm. I still remember passing through a small village in the highlands where evenings lacked modern entertainment like television or mobile phones. The villagers had a habit of gathering together to tell folktales, sing traditional songs, or simply gaze at the starry sky. They lived so simply, yet smiles were always present on their faces. I wondered what made them so happy, while in cities full of conveniences, people often felt stressed and uneasy. The answer came from an elder in the village. He said, "We are mindful of what we take in, not just food, but also what we see and hear. Anything that disturbs our peace, we avoid." His words stayed with me for a long time. In that place, no one watched violent movies or played stimulating games. Instead, they found joy in nature, in simple stories, and in human connections. Reflecting on it, what we take in daily through our eyes and ears is no different from food. A horror movie, a violent game, or a negative news report is like consuming unhealthy meals. They leave invisible marks on our minds, making us more sensitive to anger, anxiety, or even fear. The scariest part is that we often don't notice this accumulation. It seeps into our subconscious, nurturing seeds of negativity, which eventually grow into thoughts and behaviors. I once saw a young friend who was deeply into violent online games. He said, "It's just a game, nothing serious." But over time, I noticed he became more irritable, impatient, and often reacted harshly when things didn't go his way. After a big argument with his family, he admitted that he felt like there was a fire inside him, hard to control. That wasn't a coincidence. Every action, thought, or word we produce is a wave of energy, and like the butterfly effect, it can create impacts far greater than we imagine. A kind word can soothe a troubled soul, while a careless remark can ignite conflicts. This applies not only to how we interact with others, but also to how we treat ourselves. Negative thoughts, if repeated, can erode the peace within us. So what should we do? First, start by reflecting on ourselves. Take time to review what you've taken in over the past week, the movies, the conversations, or the recurring thoughts in your mind. Did anything make you feel unsettled? Was anyone hurt by your words or actions? Try practicing this habit regularly, like a cleanup for the mind. Second, learn to generate positive energy from the small things. Sometimes a kind word, a smile, or a simple gesture can change the atmosphere around us. Most importantly, be mindful of what we allow into our minds, just as we carefully choose clean food to protect our bodies. A teacher once told me, "The soul is like a garden. If you neglect it, weeds will take over. But if you spend a little time each day removing negative thoughts and planting good seeds, the garden will bloom beautifully." Gentle films, cheerful music, or even a quiet moment sitting under the sunlight, these are ways to sow seeds for our souls. And when the soul is at peace, not only do we live more harmoniously, but we also spread that peace to those around us. When I reflect on thoughts about greed, anger, ignorance, and the value of living in the present moment, I recall a story from an old friend. He was once a very successful manager, but always felt burdened and never truly satisfied. One day, during a conversation, he confessed, "Every day I wake up with a long to-do list, but even after completing it, I still don't feel happy. I often think about my past mistakes and blame myself, or I worry about what might happen in the future. I've never truly lived in the present." I asked him, "What about now, this very moment, as we sit here? How do you feel?" He stayed silent for a long time before replying, "I don't know. Maybe empty." This is the reality many of us face. We are so pulled by the past and the future that we lose our sense of the present. We often become haunted by past mistakes, by the pain we've caused or endured. But the past is not something we're meant to carry endlessly. It is a valuable lesson. If we learn from it, we grow. Another friend once told me he deeply regretted hurting a loved one during an argument. He apologized, but every time he thought about it, the guilt still weighed on him. Only when he learned to forgive himself was he able to truly free himself from the past and live more fully. Forgiving oneself is the first step in transforming the soul. We cannot change what has happened, but we can learn to prevent it from happening again. Each time we face a mistake, we should ask ourselves, what have I learned from this? This reflection allows us to draw lessons and move forward with greater clarity. One significant realization I've gained from people's stories is this: our minds are constantly changing, and so are the people around us. Once, a student shared that he couldn't forgive an old friend for past hurts. I asked him, "When was the last time you saw that person?" He replied, "Many years ago." I said, "Are you certain they are still the person you remember? Do you think that you too are the same person you were yesterday?" The truth is, we often view others through the lens of the past and the biases we've formed. But just as our own minds evolve with every moment, so do others. When we allow ourselves to see them as they are in the present, we'll notice that they've changed, and so have we. Only when we pause, listen, and observe can we truly perceive that transformation. Living mindfully is not easy, but it is the path to true freedom. Try setting aside just a few minutes each day to sit quietly, doing nothing but focusing on your breath. In those brief moments, you'll realize that peace is always available. It's just that we've forgotten it. A woman I once met transformed her life through this simple habit. She said, "I used to feel lost, but when I started practicing mindfulness, I realized that nothing is more precious than the present moment. Worries about the future or regrets about the past cannot hurt me unless I allow them to take over my mind." To help others change, we need to see them with the heart of the present moment. When we truly believe in their ability to change and recognize their efforts to improve, we not only inspire them, but also free ourselves from negative emotions like anger or resentment. This doesn't mean ignoring mistakes, but understanding that everyone has the opportunity to begin anew. Life is a constant flow. The past is gone, the future hasn't arrived, and the present is all we have. Once at a family gathering, I met an elderly man with a contemplative demeanor. His eyes seemed to hold countless unspoken thoughts. During the meal, someone brought up an old story about his past mistakes. He simply smiled without responding. After the meal, he quietly went outside and sat beneath a tree. I approached him and asked what he thought about what had been said. He turned to me with a calm gaze and replied, "Mistakes? Who doesn't have them? What matters is how we rise after we fall." That simple yet profound statement stayed with me. He went on to share that he had once lived with deep regret for his past mistakes and tried to please everyone as a way to make amends. But he soon realized that merely fixing things on the surface would never be enough. "What truly brought me peace," he said, "was facing myself, understanding the roots of my mistakes, and changing little by little from there." What moved me most wasn't his acceptance of his faults, but his belief in transformation. He didn't just change himself, he changed how he viewed others. He said, "I used to see my children through the lens of their mistakes, but then I understood that, like me, they are learning to grow. If I want them to change, I must start by changing how I see them." The human mind is like flowing water. It never stays still, but constantly moves and transforms. We often make the mistake of believing that others will always remain as they were yesterday. Yet the truth is, anyone in any circumstance has the potential to change, if they recognize it and are given the opportunity to act differently. When we cling to preconceived notions about someone, we not only hurt them, but also close the door to empathy and forgiveness within ourselves. Mistakes, when viewed correctly, are not something to hide or avoid, but an opportunity to understand ourselves more deeply. Wrong actions often stem from wounded emotions or challenging circumstances. Someone's anger is rarely about a desire to hurt others. It often reveals their inner pain. When we understand this, we begin to see people with greater compassion. I once heard a story about a young woman who made many mistakes within her family. Each time she was confronted, she would resist feeling unfairly judged. But one day, after sitting down for an honest conversation with her mother, she realized her mother's anger came from worry, from deep love. When she shifted how she saw her mother, their relationship transformed. From that point, she began to take responsibility for her actions without harboring resentment. When we recognize that all mistakes originate from the mind, facing them becomes less about fear and more about growth. True change doesn't come from merely saying, "I'm sorry," but through quietly doing things differently, day by day. Old habits, if not replaced with new actions, will keep pulling us back into the cycle of error. The hardest part is not just forgiving others, but forgiving ourselves. Forgiveness opens the door to change. It doesn't mean forgetting every mistake, but accepting them as part of the journey. And when we look at others, we must remember that, like us, they too are trying to do better each day. We cannot live forever through the lens of the past, for it imprisons not just others, but ourselves as well. If our minds can change today, then we must believe that others' minds can too. By seeing the present clearly, we find peace within and give others the chance to change and grow. The image of still water rippling when the wind blows is a beautiful metaphor for the human soul. The mind, in its essence, is pure and serene, but external forces, anger, ignorance, or negative energy can disturb it, much like small waves rippling across a calm lake. What's important to remember is that these ripples are temporary. They do not alter the true nature of the mind.